and I help frustrated and overwhelmed and really kind of just lost women find their God-given purpose. I help them find their flavor, which really kind of is their personality that God designed them to have. And I help women find those blocks that they have and those mistaken thinking and their really bad motivation, and I help them overcome that. And Hebrews 13:10 says that God has equipped us with every good thing that we need to do His will. And my coaching is with a biblical perspective, and I use stories and examples to really give women the confidence they need, but most of all, grace. And grace for themselves and grace for other people when the plans fall apart, when things don't go right. Because I think grace for one another and for yourself too is very important. I started when I started writing, and I started kind of getting this pull when I became a stay-at-home mom. My kids were playing in the yard, and I began to write stories. I started going to conferences. I started reading everything I could about writing, and I began to blog. Do y'all remember that movie, Julia and Julia, where Julia would blog about Julia Child's recipes? I watched that one night, and that night I decided, I'm going to start a blog. I can do that. So I also got a tip from a writing conference I went to, and I began writing for the Weatherford Now. And so I write for the Burleson Now and the Weatherford Now and the Granbury Now. So my reach kind of expanded. And then I speak at church a lot on Wednesday night to the women's class. So I had all these different gifts that I was using. And last November, God helped me tie all of them together. And He laid it on my heart to take a women's life purpose coaching class. So I got certified as a life purpose coach. And I named my business Steeped in Purpose. And it's on my business cards, it's on my brochures. And I just wanted to explain just a little bit about that name. I read it in a book, and it didn't have anything to do with tea. It didn't have anything to do with a drink or anything. It was just, we were steeped in information. But I love that word. So I looked that up, and I researched it. I had written 2 pages front and back of names that I wanted for my business, and they were gone, and there was no, they were taken, or I loved one and my husband hated it, and so I kept on looking, and I found this Steeped. So I started looking that up, and I found Steeped in Purpose. I thought, well, that's going to be taken, but it wasn't. And so, and to me, the steeped part, when tea is steeped, you have to be patient. And it takes time. So when you are in coaching, it takes time. It is not something quick in this quick world that we live in. And I just want to say, Moses had 40 years in Egypt, and then he had 40 years in Midian. And those 40 years were preparing him for his last most important 40 years. Well, I started this when I was about 40. So I kind of have a Moses story. And so I can't wait to see what Moses has for my next 40 years. The flavor is just your personality. And, when I was growing up, in junior high and elementary, there was a girl who was being bullied, and I kind of helped her get out of that situation. I beat up a boy underneath the football stadium because he called one of my friends fat. I was always the designated drugger because I wanted to be. And when I was a newlywed, I spent the night with a girl because she was contemplating suicide. And when I went through the coaching program, all this stuff came up, and I realized God has been giving me glimpses my whole life about my personality and about who I was. And so I figured out that I always liked to help the underdog. I still do when I watch a football game, you know, and it could change throughout the game. Whoever's losing, I want the other one to do better. So I comfort the hurting, and I try to rescue somebody who is in a bad situation. So that is what I have done ever since I was little. And soaking up. Your tea bag soaks up the water. But then what does it do after it soaks up the information? It soaks up that water. Then it permeates everything else around it. And I love to learn, I love to read, and I want to share that. So that's kind of where the name came from. I want to provide that extra support for women. Now, you don't have to raise your hands, but I do want you to think of, or I want to know who in here has already abandoned some of their New Year's resolutions. I read an article that said of all the people who make New Year's resolutions, only 8% of them actually keep them. And of that 8%, only 4% actually ask for help for their resolutions that they even make. So I want to help people stay on track. And I am available for one-to-one coaching and for group coaching in my office or Skype or on the phone. It can be in lots of different ways. One of the programs I have is the Life Puzzle, and that is what I just explained, where I looked back and I saw all those little glimpses of God. So for $60 for an hour session, I can help you find those little glimpses of God that He has been showing you all along. I have another program that's called Mature Up, Developing a Lasting Legacy of Love. And this is a really kind of a hardcore look at the lies, at your judgments, at your, there was one more, at just all those lies that Satan baits you with. And this is a really kind of reshapes your character is what this program is. It is 8 sessions and is $400, or you can do it in a group session and then the cost is divided. Another one that's very popular is a goal planning session. It's 3 sessions for $150, and it is where we just lay out all your dreams. We lay out all of your goals, and then we pick 4 that are your priority that you want to go for. We look at what blocks you, we look at your attitudes, we look at your motivation for that, and we pick 3 specific steps for each one of those goals to help you make your target. I also speak. I have developed and created and executed 3 brunches at my congregation with the women that are there, and so I really enjoy speaking also. So what I am looking for is that 4% of women who ask for help, who need that extra support. And I want to really make change easy for them. So I guess that's kind of all I have. But what I want to know is what questions that you have, if there's any.
Yes. Does anybody else do what you do? Because you're unique. I've never heard of anybody doing what you do.
It is kind of a sweeping across the nation, coming this direction. It's more over on the East Coast. Coaches, business coaches. There's so many business coaches that I have seen that help you in the business aspect. Not many are biblical-based life purpose coaches. I know there is a divorce recovery coach here in town. Other than that, it's kind of new. Somebody else?
Where do you do your counseling?
I have an office right across the street from the Jordan Taylor, the furniture shop, and the Wally Wallace, it's on the back. If you can see that picture in that wood paneled building, but it's 119 North Main. I have an office up there. I have also done workshop in the Jordan Taylor building. She has a cute little space in the back with couches, and you can sit in your comfy chairs. And I've had a workshop back there before too. So, anyway, is there anything else?
What's a 2-day life plan?
Oh, I did a 2-day life plan. I have to go through all of the coaching with my coach when I went through the certification program. I went to her house, and all the things that I talked about, you do that intense, the entire program in 2 days. It's about 16 hours. There are 10 different modules. You do all of them. She puts it in a booklet, you get a folder, and then you get to see your life in that packet, and your goals and what to work for, and that is a very neat. I have done that with a lady, and she was just kind of in awe at everything she learned about herself and about what she wanted to do.
What about the dues? You've eliminated half of your marketplace.
I can hook you up, but there was a very interesting video that Katie Brazelton, the professor, shared with us, and it was the example of why women only work with women and men only work with men. And this was in a group of about this size, and she had a male and a female kind of doing their coaching thing. They were asking each other questions, and they were doing it. And the lady started crying because something came up, and he came over and gave her a hug. And she set a timeout, and she said, "Men, would you want your wife? Would you want the male coach to come over and coddle your wife like that?" And they were like, "No." And women, would you want your husband to do that? And it kind of just played out as we want to have integrity and to be above reproach and not have that situation even have a chance to
It just
occur.
dawned on me, you said dudes, not dudes.
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 Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm just, yeah, okay. Alright.
But anyways, women work with women and men work with men. But I can pick you up with me. Which that sounds weird too.
Yeah. We may have gotten
Awkward. And also, I have brochures and business cards on the table, and also my book. I forgot to mention. I wrote a chapter in this book that I had mentioned the last time, but I started that back in January. And now, January just passed. It took 12 months to get that completed, to get that to the publisher, to get that out. So that is one thing I want to stress. If you never start, you're never going to get anything done. And it may take a long time. It may have to steep, and it may have to percolate in there. But if you never start, you're never going to accomplish it. So that took 12 months, but it was so exciting when I got the box in the mail. So anyway, thank you.